Here are 9 shocking facts that we didn't know before moving here to Kansas City. Stick around because fact number 8 is one of my favorite things about Kansas City, and I can't wait to share it with you. Number 1 is that Kansas City is consistently on the most dangerous cities list every single year. US News puts out this list of the most dangerous cities in terms of crime rate in America year over year. And I've seen Kansas City on this list basically every single year that I've lived here. This year, we are number 20. Years past, we've been as high as number 15, and we've also been as low as number 35, but we are always consistently on the top 50 most dangerous cities list. Some people know this, but we had no clue before relocating here. Now, a lot of this crime is very local to a few areas in Kansas City. So if you're thinking about moving here, then give us a call. We can talk you through all of the different areas and the pros and cons of each area. But it is an important fact for you to know. Compared to the US average, Kansas City's overall crime rates are significantly higher. One source says 193% higher than the national average, which is really high. A large portion of the violent crime, unfortunately, is aggravated assault, but there also are property crimes like larceny, theft, motor vehicle theft, which I have a story about, I'll tell you in a little bit, burglary. Those are, also major things that happen in Kansas City. But like I said before, it is not evenly distributed across the city. Depending on where you are, you don't necessarily have to be on high alert or live in fear. The citywide averages are one thing, but there are many neighborhoods that are perfectly fine. Like I said, I'll tell you a story about one of my clients who moved actually into our neighborhood, and they have, I think it's like a 2012 Kia. And if you don't know, there has been a gang, it's been an unofficial gang, but there has been a gang of people going around called the Kia Boys who have specifically been breaking into Kias and stealing them. Fortunately, his Kia did not get stolen, but they did break in and they did take a lot of stuff out of his Kia, including his backpack, his laptop. He also got his stereo taken. So that's going to be one thing that you're going to want to think about if you drive a Kia and you want to relocate here, is that there is crime across Kansas City, and you are definitely going to want to keep your car secure. I had another client too who was renting in a different area of Kansas City, and she had her car stolen. Unfortunately, they haven't been able to recover it. So it's not just like a one-off thing. It does happen in Kansas City. The number 2 fact is that we do have some shocking infrastructure and public services issues in Kansas City. Staffing shortages, KCPD has been short around 300 officers according to the stats that they put out. But the biggest thing, if you're going to relocate here, is that if you do live in Kansas City proper and you do call 911, you're going to want to know that the city's emergency call system is under significant strain. At least the last time that we called, we were on hold for about 8 minutes before we could get through to a dispatcher for 911. And that was because we live in a neighborhood that's kind of hit and miss in terms of crime. But when our neighbor was, doing some stuff and we heard some gunshots and we heard some screaming in the house, we called 911 and we were put on hold for a very long time. I do remember, kind of watching outside our window, looking to see if anything was happening, on hold with 911. And I was like, this is crazy. This is not good. The last time that they measured this in 2023, they said that the wait time was much higher than national standards, around 39 seconds on average, up from about 17 seconds when they last measured in 2020. I don't know if they're going to do another study in like 2026 or what, but you can imagine if somebody's having like a heart attack, a stroke, if somebody is being assaulted, you're not going to even want to wait 17 seconds. You're going to want to get through to somebody right away. But because of these delays and gaps, there's, some residents do testify and say that they kind of feel unsafe or they feel underserved when calling for help. And that is a very unfortunate thing. That's probably the most serious thing, but the infrastructure issues kind of spread a lot further than that. We do have a lot of potholes here. When you're driving on our streets, you're going to see a ton of potholes. We're the 10th worst city in the US for potholes in 2024. I don't know how they measured that, but they did. And I can testify that I had an old car. It was kind of like a Toyota Prius. It was a little bit lower to the ground. And I was driving through, didn't pay attention. I think the pothole was covered in snow or something. And I hit the pothole probably at like 25 miles per hour, knocked most of my bumper off, dented my rim, drove with it like that for a while. Before I got it fixed. But that's going to be a reality of living here, is that we do have so many potholes. Another thing that I didn't expect about living here was the trash services. When we first moved here, they would just have us put like 2 trash bags out park by the curb, and then they would come collect them. And of course, raccoons and mice would get into them. It was crazy. We just now, like last year, got trash cans. So I still think there are some areas of the city where they still haven't rolled out the trash cans yet as of the recording of this video. At least when I was calling one of my clients to check in, he was like, dude, when am I going to get my trash cans? And I was like, oh, dude, you're still living in a place where they don't have trash cans out yet. And he was paying the city for trash pickup. You know, I guess that's just one thing that you're going to want to know about moving to Kansas City. Hopefully by the time you watch this video and by the time you relocate here to Kansas City, everybody has trash cans. But if you are looking to relocate, give us a call at 816-4-MOVE-KC. We help tons of people all the time relocate to Kansas City from all over the country. So we love hearing from you and just seeing how our videos are helping people who are thinking about moving out here to Kansas City. So 816-4-MOVE-KC is our number. Now, speaking of the infrastructure, Kansas City is rapidly growing and rapidly expanding, which we are loving. It's just awesome having so many people like yourself relocating here and so many great additions to Kansas City. But that also means that there is construction everywhere, and there has been construction everywhere since we've moved here in 2019. Kansas City streetcar extension just finished. We used to go to our churches on Main Street, and we would drive past that streetcar extension, and it was just a hassle driving down because they blocked off a whole bunch of places. It was a hassle. It's finally finished. It's a great addition to our city, but like I said, there's many projects like that going on throughout the Kansas City metro. There's expansion on highways. There are just resurfacing roads. That's just going to be a consistent thing that's going to be happening in Kansas City. Even if you were to move here 3 years from now, 5 years from now, there's going to be a lot of construction. There's the South Loop Park that's going to be going under construction soon here in downtown. There's the Mattel theme park out in Wyandotte County. I mean, there's so many projects here that, you know, I'm cheering on because I love Kansas City and I want Kansas City to expand. But if you are going to commute, then and we'll talk about that later too. If you are going to commute, you need to factor in that construction can really slow you down. Now, speaking of the commute, number 4 is we had no clue about the commute here in Kansas City. When we moved here, we had 2 cars. We sold one, and we brought our 2000 Subaru Outback. At that time, it was 19 years old, and we decided, okay, we're going to bring this Outback. We're going to come here with 1 car because I was going to study and my wife was going to go to school, and now we have 2 cars, and we've had 2 cars ever since because the commute. KC is very, very car dependent. You are not going to be able to get by on just public transportation alone. Many jobs are not located in a place where you can use public transportation to consistently get yourself to. You're going to need a car. There are so many highways here in Kansas City. According to the latest research, the metro has more highway miles per capita than any large US metro area. So if you're going to want to get around, you're going to want to get a car in Kansas City. And that obviously adds complexity if you only have 1 car. If you don't have a car yet and you're moving from a place like New York or Philadelphia, 2 clients I help move from those places are like, there's no public transportation here. And I'm like, yeah, didn't you watch my videos? I'm trying to tell you that there's no public transportation here that you can reliably use to get to work. So you're going to need a car. And that's an added expense. That's an added budget line item. If you're looking to buy a house or if you're looking to rent here, you're going to want to think about that. So when you're choosing a neighborhood, just think through, what's my commute going to look like? How consistent is my commute going to be? Is there major construction planned on the route? And here's another thing that can make your commute longer, which is our number 5 thing, is the weather. Now, we've talked about weather before on our channel, but this is specifically the unpredictability of the weather. We know, you probably know, that Kansas City has very hot and humid summers. The July averages around 90 degrees with humidity that feels like 95 to 100, and it can get to 100. Spring brings like crazy weather. It's beautiful for most of the spring, but it can bring crazy thunderstorms, hail, strong winds, you know, trees can get blown over, all that stuff is spring. Fall, I would say, is probably one of the best times in all of Kansas City. And then winter can get really low, like -10. I do have a story. 2 years ago now, my in-laws were coming to visit, and we planned this whole, you know, fun thing with them, with the kids, and we decided to go on this urban hike on December 27th. And so the week before Christmas, we were kind of, you know, stoked about doing this hike that was, you know, tour guide led. But the week before Christmas, it was like -10 degrees, and we were thinking we made a huge mistake to try to schedule this hike the 2 days after Christmas. Now, 2 days after Christmas, it came. It was much milder. It wasn't -10, but the day started out, it was like 30 degrees. It was still pretty cold, but the temperature slowly climbed throughout the day, so that by the time we went on the hike at 4 o'clock, it was like 65 degrees. And I remember I was bundled up in my, you know, long underwear because I thought it was going to be frigid, and I had to, you know, find a place to go take it off because it was getting so warm, and I was just, sweating through all of my clothes. It was disgusting. So we have huge weather swings here in Kansas City, and that's not even to mention the tornadoes, which is our number 6 thing. Kansas City is definitely situated in a region that is vulnerable to tornadoes. We are on the edge of what a lot of people call Tornado Alley. According to the Regional Hazard Mitigation Plan, the chance of a tornado of various intensities each year is non-trivial. For example, there's a 60% chance each year that we have a weak tornado in the Kansas City region. That shrinks to about 25% chance of a severe to dangerous tornado in the Kansas City region per year. So here's the thing, it's going to affect you in different ways. Number one, I did have a client who I was taking out. We were seeing townhomes, and we got stuck out during a tornado last year, actually this year, 2025. A tornado touched down in Raytown, which is not super far from me, and definitely right in the middle of the Kansas City metro. And so we had to hunker down because it was raining sideways, sheets of water were pouring down, and they were just saying, look, shelter in place because there's a tornado. I believe it's a tornado watch when there are favorable conditions for a tornado, like the right, blend of weather. But it's a tornado warning when one actually touches down and has been sighted. And so we were under a tornado warning because they said in Raytown there was a tornado that had touched down that was moving, I believe, southeast at the time. So we drove through it, not the tornado, but we drove through the storm because we knew it was moving away from us. But that was a pretty scary time. Another thing that you're going to want to know, especially if you're coming here and you're buying a home, is that you're going to want a home with a basement. There are a lot of people moving to the Kansas City metro that are moving from areas that don't have any semblance of any type of tornado that could come through their region. For example, for us, the biggest thing for us in LA was earthquakes. I experienced my first earthquake when I was like 4 years old, and throughout my life, once a year, twice a year, there would be earthquakes. It was something that we just lived with. Hey, this is what happens when you live that close to the San Andreas Fault. But conceptually, you kind of fear what you don't know rather than what you're used to. So when I moved here to Kansas City, my mom was super worried. She's like, you better get a house with a basement because you're going to want a place to go when you see a tornado. And she thought tornadoes were like happening all the time. It's not that frequent. It's not that common. Again, like it might be like once a year that we have favorable conditions for a tornado. And the tornado fatalities are actually few and far between. Only one person died from a tornado in 2024. That's not to minimize that, but you would think that with it being such a huge weather event, that it would be something that would affect your day-to-day life so much more. But that's not necessarily the case. But all that to say is that if you were looking to buy a home in Kansas City, because there's so many people moving from outside of Kansas City to inside Kansas City, what I hear all the time from when people like you call me is they say, look, we want to find a home. A basement is a must because we need a place to go when there's a tornado. And so if you buy a home without a basement, on slab, on crawl space, I will say that when I sell those homes, you have a certain section of people that say, I don't want the home at all because it doesn't have a place to go during a tornado. So keep that in mind as you're trying to be a smart home buyer or a smart investor. The number 7 thing is also pretty seasonable, and that is the bugs here in Kansas City. Growing up in Los Angeles, of course we had our mosquitoes, but I feel like it was nowhere near as severe as it is here in Kansas City, probably because of the humidity. When I was growing up, I knew that, for whatever reason, mosquitoes were very attracted to my blood, very attracted to me, so I'd be covered in mosquito bites, and it was disgusting. But I remember moving here to Kansas City, and the intensity of that was ratcheted up like a lot. I definitely had to treat my lawn. We put out these mosquito dunks to try to minimize mosquitoes, but it's not just the mosquitoes. There are also huge cicadas, which are actually, I find the sound of cicadas pretty cool and really beautiful, but a lot of people find them annoying. But cicadas are huge bugs, like they're like this big, and they emerge once every 17 years, but each year there's a brood that emerges that was actually, I don't know what the correct word term for it is, put in the ground 17 years ago by other cicadas. It's a really crazy cycle. So cicadas are another thing. We have a lot more wasps and hornets than what I was used to living here in Kansas City than compared to California. The most severe thing, though, I would think about is we have deer ticks and Lone Star ticks in the Kansas City metro. I golf, and I've had ticks on me before. Luckily, they've never latched, and I found them before they could latch onto me. But I do have a client who was bitten by a tick, and she got Lyme disease and could not eat red meat anymore. I mean, could you imagine not being able to eat red meat, which is my favorite type of meat, all right? Because you got Lyme disease. Crazy. So you're going to want to watch out for the ticks here in Kansas City. Carry bug spray and mitigate for those mosquitoes, because you're just going to want to know that bugs here are definitely a thing compared to where you're coming from. Now, number 8 has been one of the most actually pleasant surprises about Kansas City that we discovered that we didn't know before moving here, but we've discovered in the years since living here, and that is Swope Park. Swope Park is one of our favorite areas in all of Kansas City because there are tons of things to do inside Swope Park. Swope Park contains our zoo and aquarium, which is top notch. I mean, for the size of the city we have a really great zoo and aquarium. There's 2 golf courses there. There's Heart of America, where I take my kids all the time. And then there's Swope Memorial, which is an awesome course that is closed down 2025, will reopen 2026. Really stoked for that. Plenty of playgrounds. There's a zipline park, which is really cool. There's mountain biking trails, walking trails. There's the Starlight Theater. All of those things are located in Swope Park. It's like Kansas City's version of Central Park. But one of the things about Swope Park is that it can be a rougher area if you want to live right next to Swope Park. But I didn't know anything about Swope Park, and you should know if you're going to relocate here that actually the areas surrounding Swope Park and access to Swope Park is a really cool thing to have if you want to have this kind of wilderness experience, but in the heart of Kansas City. It's a really cool area. And the last thing that I didn't know about Kansas City before I moved was the local pride here. There are so many people who live in Kansas City who just love Kansas City. We are among the people who just love it here. I made a video arguing for why Kansas City is the best city in all of America, and this is coming from an LA native who was born and raised in the past 30 years. Yes, we might have the unpredictable weather, the potholes, the construction, all of that stuff, the crime, but we love Kansas City like nowhere else. The first time that I flew out of Kansas City to go back to Los Angeles for a friend's wedding, and I was coming back, I couldn't find my gate because my app hadn't updated yet. But I did look around and I noticed there was a bunch of people wearing just Kansas City merch just going to this one gate. So I took my chances and just stood by the gate. Turns out it was the right gate. And the only reason I mention this is because it wasn't like Kansas City sports merch. I'm not talking about like Patrick Mahomes Chiefs jerseys. I'm not talking about like Bobby Witt Royals jerseys. I'm talking about just random shirts that just said like Kansas City, or random, shirts that had the heart with the KC. Coming from Los Angeles, I would never wear just Los Angeles merch. I would wear Dodgers merch. I would wear Chargers merchandise. I would wear Lakers stuff because those are the teams that I cheer for, and of course they had Los Angeles on them. But I would never wear just like a generic Los Angeles shirt. But in Kansas City, I have so many generic Kansas City shirts that just say, I love Kansas City, explore Kansas City. You might have seen them in some of my videos. But that's just the local pride here in Kansas City. We love it here. 2019, I lived in Los Angeles, and the Los Angeles Rams were in the Super Bowl. When I was there in Los Angeles, nobody cared. Nobody, batted an eye, because there's so many other things to do in Los Angeles, and we're a Dodgers and Lakers town anyway, right? But moving here in 2020, or in late 2019, in 2020, the Chiefs were in the Super Bowl, and we were here for that, and it was just completely different. There were people out on the streets putting out huge banners. Every time the Chiefs would score a Super Bowl touchdown, there were fireworks and everything, and it's been that way ever since. Every time the Chiefs score on a big playoff game, you're going to expect fireworks. So that's just a flavor of how much our city loves our local sports teams and loves our city in general. Now, if you're thinking about moving to Kansas City and you want to explore a great neighborhood, click right here.